The first time I saw her, she looked like any other person. Ordinary hair, ordinary clothes, and an ordinary smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She sat on a bench in the bustling city park, scrolling on a device that seemed ancient compared to the floating holograms everyone else used. I noticed her only because the chaos of the city, with its hovering transports and neon advertisements, made her stillness almost hypnotic. I had come to this sector to escape the monotony of my job at the data archives, a gray cubicle world of numbers and histories no one cared about. But something about her made me stop. Maybe it was the way she didn't seem to belong. Or maybe it was the whisper of a thought that brushed the edges of my mind, like a signal from an unknown source. "Hi," I said. She glanced up at me, expression neutral. "Do I know you?" she asked. Her voice was soft, almost melodic, but carried a tone of authority that made me want to stumble over my words. "No," I said, realizing immediately how absurd it sounded. "I just thought maybe I'd say hello." She smiled then, briefly, like a flicker of light. "Hello," she replied. That was it. No small talk, no meaningless chatter. Just hello. And yet, there was something in her posture, in the way she shifted her weight slightly, that suggested she knew far more than anyone should. I started seeing her often. Not intentionally. At first, it was random, but soon I noticed patterns. She would appear in markets I had never been to, in transport hubs I didn't know existed, always moving with purpose, never interacting with anyone for more than a moment. People seemed to recognize her, bow subtly, avert their eyes, even whisper her name. And then, one day, I heard someone mutter it aloud, and it was like a key turning in a lock. Alicia. I repeated the name in my mind. Alicia. It rolled off my tongue strangely, like it belonged to another time, another world. My curiosity became a compulsion. Who was she? Why did everyone treat her like that? And why had no one ever mentioned her before? I started following her. Not in a way that would get me caught, but subtly through shadows, behind crowds, keeping distance. The city had levels, streets above streets, tunnels beneath tunnels, skyways that glimmered like glass ribbons. She moved through them effortlessly, always alone, always aware. It was as if the city itself bent to her will, a fluid maze she had mastered before anyone else could even map it. It wasn't until the night of the blackout that I truly understood her. The blackout was citywide, a sudden failure of energy conduits that threw the entire metropolis into darkness. Panic rose like a tide. Holo displays died, air transport halted mid-flight, and streetlights flickered out, leaving only the pale luminescence of emergency beacons. I was trapped in a high-rise, my apartment a small box of shadows. And then I saw her, moving through the streets below. She didn't stumble in the darkness. She didn't pause. It was like the night itself parted for her, revealing paths only she could see. I followed her instinctively, navigating the alleyways and rooftops until she stopped before an unremarkable building, a nondescript government archive that supposedly held nothing but old records and forgotten data. And then, she lifted her hand, and the building lit up. Not with lights, but with the glow of systems awakening, doors sliding open silently, security protocols yielding instantly. Every camera, every drone, every defense measure recognized her command. My heart thudded, so hard I thought it would betray my presence. She turned then, and her eyes met mine. And in that moment, the ordinary mask slipped. "You're following me," she said, calm but piercing. I didn't mean to," I stammered. She considered me for a long moment. Then she did something I never expected. She smiled. And not just a polite smile, one that suggested understanding, amusement, and an invitation all at once. Come inside, she said. The interior of the building was like stepping into another dimension. Walls of data streamed in midair, holographic files spinning gently, some forming maps of sectors I had never seen. Rooms opened and closed on their own, responding to her presence. She moved through it all like a conductor, every element bending to her direction without a word. I began, but she raised a hand. I know what you're thinking, she said. You think I'm some kind of archivist or tech genius. That's cute. But no, I'm more. I frowned. More? She walked toward a central console and touched it, and suddenly the city skyline was projected before me. Every district illuminated, every transport route, every security grid visible. And then she touched the projection again, and sections of the city shifted subtly, traffic rerouted, security drones repositioned. I am Alicia, she said. And yes, I rule everything. Not because I want to, but because I am the only one who can manage it. I blinked. You what? You mean the city? She shook her head. Not just the city. The networks, the infrastructures, the systems that govern life as you know it. Every floating transport, every power core, every data node, it's all under my oversight. And if someone tried to take control, they wouldn't survive the consequences. I staggered back, suddenly feeling the weight of what I had assumed was an ordinary encounter. The woman I had thought was ordinary was the architect, the keeper, the ruler of an entire civilization's veins and arteries. Over the following weeks, I learned more than I could have imagined. She wasn't omnipotent in the sense of magic or invincibility. She was a master of systems, a strategist, someone who understood connections that most people didn't even know existed. She could manipulate supply chains, redirect energy, influence politics, and stabilize crises before they even reached public consciousness. Yet, she lived in secrecy. People saw only the ordinary version of her. The one on the bench, the one in a market, the one who sometimes gave the smallest of smiles and moved on. I became her shadow in some ways, an observer, a student. And yet, she allowed me into her world, not fully, but enough to glimpse it, enough to understand the magnitude of her burden. She confided in me once, late one night, in the projection room that overlooked the city. The skyline shimmered like liquid metal beneath the moon. Do you know what it's like to hold everything together? She asked softly. I can't imagine, I said. Exactly. And yet I have to. Every choice I make ripples through lives, through systems, through the fragile balance of civilization. One mistake and people die, structures collapse, chaos reigns. So I hide. I appear ordinary because ordinary people don't attract attention. Ordinary people aren't questioned. Ordinary people survive. And in that confession, I realized something profound. Her power wasn't just technical or strategic. It was moral, emotional, psychological. She bore the weight of the world quietly, invisibly, and in a way that made her far more human than anyone else around her. Then came the threat. A coalition of rogue technocrats, determined to seize control of the city's infrastructure, launched an assault. Drones swarmed, energy grids faltered, and chaos threatened to erupt in the streets. And yet, she moved with precision. Commands flowed from her like water. Systems obeyed instantly. Countermeasures deployed in perfect synchronization. I watched, helpless and amazed, as she orchestrated the city's defense. It wasn't violence for her. It was prevention, calculation, protection. When the rogue faction tried to breach the main hub, she isolated them, rerouted power, and neutralized them without unnecessary destruction. The city was saved, and yet, to the public, it seemed as though nothing had happened. Life continued, unbroken, unaware. Afterward, she turned to me. Do you understand now why I seem ordinary? Yes, I whispered. Because if anyone knew, they'd expect too much, or worse. They try to control you. She smiled faintly, the ordinary mask briefly returning. Exactly. Ordinary is my armor. Power is my responsibility. And everything else is just life. Eventually, I stopped following her everywhere. I realized that my role was not to be a partner in control, but an observer, someone who understood, someone who could appreciate the delicate balance she maintained. I kept in touch, learned when I could contribute, and watched as she continued to rule quietly, invisibly, flawlessly. The city never knew. The people never knew. And perhaps that was exactly how it should be, because Alicia, the woman who seemed ordinary, had mastered the extraordinary without ever letting it define her outward identity. She was the unseen hand that guided the world, and the world was better for it. I still see her sometimes, on the same park bench, scrolling through her device as if she were a simple citizen. And I smile, knowing the truth, because she is anything but ordinary. She is everything. As the weeks turned into months, life in the city continued as usual. People went about their routines, unaware of the quiet battles, the hidden calculations, and the crises that never reached the public eye. And Alicia? She remained on her bench in the park, her outwardly ordinary self unchanging, yet carrying the weight of everything that mattered. I sometimes wondered if she ever felt lonely, carrying such responsibility alone. But then I would see her interact with the systems around her, the way she spoke to the city as if it were alive, the way she corrected mistakes before anyone noticed, the subtle gestures that reminded me that power didn't need recognition to be meaningful. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the city lights flickered to life, she invited me to the projection room again. The skyline shimmered like molten silver, and the hum of energy flowed beneath our feet. "You know," she said softly, "I've always believed that the most important power is the one no one sees. It's not about control, it's about responsibility. And if you carry it well, it can save lives without anyone ever realizing it." I nodded, understanding finally settling in me. She wasn't ruling for glory, for fame, or for domination. She ruled to protect, to preserve, to prevent disaster before it had a chance to begin. And that made her extraordinary in a way few could comprehend. As we left the building, I noticed people greeting her with casual nods, unaware of the omnipotent force that walked among them. She returned their gestures with a faint smile, the ordinary mask perfectly in place. But I knew better. In the quiet moments, when no one was watching, Alicia allowed herself to be seen for who she truly was. A guardian, a strategist, a ruler not by title, but by necessity and heart. And I realized that the ordinary world was lucky to have someone like her silently steering it. I left that night with a profound sense of awe and a strange kind of peace. The city was safe. Life would continue. And she would remain the invisible pulse that kept everything alive. Sometimes, when I see her on that park bench, scrolling on her device, I smile quietly. Because she is ordinary to the world, but extraordinary in every way that matters. She rules not for power, not for recognition, but because she can and because she chooses to carry it with grace. And that, I finally understood, was the truest form of greatness.